Oh, Tajinder.
Hey,
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
Good, good. Where, where, uh, where are you dialing in from?
I'm dialing from Virginia,
Oh,
US.
very good. Okay. Yeah, I was gonna say, man, it looks like morning time. It looks like
Yeah.
it looks like American paint on the walls. The reason I say it like that is just because I think you'll find that there's going to be a lot of folks hopefully a lot of folks on the call, a fair number of Indians as well, except I think only one other will be residing in the U.S. So,
Okay, cool. Cool, cool.
yeah, no, I take it back. Actually, maybe we'll have two others because there was another guy, hopefully that you'll meet, Durgesh. He had messaged last night that he's all done with school. He lives in Dallas, and he's pumped, I think, to get deep into something. I think he's yet to figure out what that is, but he's excited.
Yeah. I think I'm also excited to join, and I just need to now get started. I've got some onboarding directions at the Slack, and I'll start going through that. But this is my first meeting, and just wanted to get familiar as getting started.
Oh, that's fantastic. Good. We'll when a few more folks come on, we'll force you to introduce, just because it's nice to get to know everybody. Um, while we're waiting, since we're catching up, remind me, or maybe I don't know, how did you come across the community? How did you come across the projects?
I was going through some of the research work which I do while looking at various technologies, and I might have come across few webinars as well. So that's where I got the link for Slack community, and I would join from there. And now I am there. I see there is a lot going on. So yeah, so it's a good opportunity to learn and contribute. I think, yeah, that's it looks really great. I just need to speed up, and so that I'm ready. And as soon as I'm ready, then I will start.
Oh yeah, no, sure. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if it's a really good thing or something of a bad thing. When people first join, they are opened up to all of the resources that are in the community, and I can imagine it's quite a bit.
Yeah.
Like, there have been a couple of folks who've joined recently um, who were very inquisitive and had lots of great questions, and we're engaging, we're talking, we're engaging. And after a few days and things, and then all of a sudden they say, "Oh, I see the Google Team Drive, the community drive,"
Okay.
and which had most of the answers to their questions, or have a lot of docs in there.
Yeah.
They were pleasantly surprised, but that also helps me understand why it is that they had so many questions. Or it's not bad that they had questions; it's that I was starting to feel like we hadn't written down enough. So,
Got it.
so this is good. So we are almost 5 minutes after. So we're. I want to pull out a Canadian joke every time I see Sudeep. Talk about Java or something. I don't know what. Fair enough. Okay. Well, we're 5 after. It's Wednesday, the 13th. This is a community call, development call for Meshery and kind of the surrounding projects within the Layer 5 community. A quick note, if it isn't obvious, we do record the meetings, and so be aware that we post them on YouTube. So with that, I think Tajinder is the lucky individual today. I think the only newcomer today. So Tajinder, do you want to just introduce briefly to the
Yep.
crew?
Yep, sure. Hi everyone, I'm Tajinder. You can call me Taj. I'm a software engineer working at Capital One. I'm based in US, Northern Virginia. I'm happy to join the community and looking forward to learn and contribute.
That's awesome. Taj. Yeah, thanks for the Taj too. That helps. I popped over the meeting minutes in the Slack, and so hopefully everyone has access. Please take notes as we go. Feel free to really any of the documents that we look at in the community should be editable by everybody on the call. So let me share those and do a quick call for topics before we jump into any topics. If you have a topic or two, now is a good time to get it teed up. I'm going to put some names next to these topics so that we know when we can speak to them. I don't know that we can speak to this one just yet. Just because people's names are next to them don't mean that those are the only people that, rather we're just trying to identify who needs to be on the call in order for us to have a productive conversation. Let me ping both Nick and Kanishkar, who are on the first two topics, to send them their own special invite to the meeting. And later, I think Kanishkar just joined. So later, Kanishkar, when you rewatch the recording, you can see how much sarcasm I was using when I was saying we were going to send you a special invite.
Okay.
And there's, damn it, there's Nick as well. I was just about to send a very harassing message to the two of you, and you both beat me to the punch. So good. Welcome, Nick and Kanishkar. You guys are the first topic today. And so while Nick and Kanishkar are getting their bearings on the call, let me briefly introduce the topic here, which is about WebAssembly and console. No, Nick, that's perfect because it gave me all just the right ammo to make fun of you and harass you while you weren't here. So WASM is short for WebAssembly. This is familiar to some of us and unfamiliar to probably most of us. Relatively new set of technologies that's WebAssembly is bigger than the service mesh ecosystem, but WebAssembly and WASM are being used to help perform some service mesh tasks or functions efficiently. And Kanishkar and I are giving a presentation at DockerCon in a couple of weeks. And when we do, our initial thought was that we would be talking about Docker Desktop and and Meshery and WASM or WebAssembly in context of Istio. And then we had a better thought to talk about that in context of console. And so we're fortunate that Nick Jackson is of HashiCorp and is of console and is of this community, and also is familiar with WASM and console's ability to run, to interface there. So anyway, that's all the background. I think the opening question is, Nick, what's the state of WebAssembly and console? It could be me, but yeah. Push to talk.
I have no idea which microphone my computer is wired up to using today. Looks like it's this one, so I apologize. Okay, so where we're at. So we will be adopting WebAssembly, specifically WebAssembly filters in Envoy, the HTTP filters, as a production mechanism. Where we are kind of like right now with that is that there is an experimental build of console which I can distribute, which allows the configuration of WebAssembly filters and the sort of the full capability of that. We're going to get that mainlined in. It probably won't hit the 1.8 release because they're busy, but like in the 1.8.1 release, where it will be an official configuration item, so you will be able to kind of switch WebAssembly capabilities on in console and use it at your own risk. I suppose the kind of the key sort of reasons why we're just not massively rushing with that, even though the code's written and is working. It was just around Envoy, because Envoy, I believe 1.15 was going to ship with Envoy, and it didn't, and it's not really out yet. But for us, we look at WebAssembly and we think that there are a huge number of opportunities why folks would want to use this to be able to create custom filters. It's a big deal. Like, it's also an evolving area. So I think, like realistically, we may be about like, I don't know, 6 to 12 months before it goes really mainstream. But the current progress is great. I mean, I was digging, there's a Go, somebody's written a Go interface to the Envoy ABI. There's two of them. One was written by some chap from Google. There's another one which is a little bit more mature. The folks from Solo have got quite a nice Node.js one, but I'm kind of digging the Go and the Tiny Go approach, because I'm no good at TypeScript. So, but I can share some stuff today on how you can use that, and I'll pop. I will find my example repo, and drop that in the chat in just a second. But yeah, we can
That's
roll
it.
with that.
I'm not sure what else to add there. That was complete. Kanishkar, any other items to add?
Nothing. I mean, I've tried Nick's his example repo. Like, I think Nick, you gave there's a talk, right, on it. I think you have a recording on it, right, in which you demonstrate it. Like, I went through that, and yeah, so I have tried it, and it works. So
yeah, I completely forgot I did that. There's I did a YouTube video with Christian Poster from Solo.
yeah, I had gone through that, and I pulled out the example repo and I tried it. It works. It works.
Okay, good. I'm just sorry. I'm lost in thinking about how I'm going to harass Nick later. So, Kanishkar, of the test that you've done with the use of the custom filter that you've just written in Rust, did it perform as expected? I mean, it sounds like you're saying it worked, and so
The thing was, I tested it on like Envoy directly, so there was some config differences, and I was not able to figure that out yet. I was looking into console and stuff because I had some difficulty like understanding the .hcl files. So I was not able to do much with it, but yeah, I'm on it. I think I'll be able to deploy my filter on it sometime
Yeah,
soon.
the current if you're using my dev build of console, and feel free to to hit me on I need to figure out why I don't get notifications on Slack. I think I probably need to get. I've got Slack on my computer, but I think it's because I use the what do you call it, the WPA, the web app version of Slack instead of the app. Anyway, I'll fix that. But yeah, hit me up. There's a couple of gotchas at the moment around the way that it works, in that you do have to have the binary for the WebAssembly filter, which is local to the Envoy instance, which is like, it's not ideal, but I think Istio does the same thing. What they actually do when they're mounting their Envoy sidecars is that they're mounting a folder path where the binary is, but it's configurable. And we're kind of looking at how we improve that when it goes production. There's a number of different ways that we can actually get Envoy, I believe, to download the filters automatically. And I think if you configure it with a path, or maybe it comes over the XDS. I don't know the full details on that. It's not something I've spent a huge amount of time looking at, but yeah, like right now it's not a massive bind to it's not a massive bind to just make sure that the filter's localized. I'd love to see the Rust stuff as well. I'm that would totally scratch a personal curiosity around that as well. I'm something I've wanted to look at in a while.
Well, assuming success with, okay, so of the dev build of console that you have, assuming success in inserting this custom filter, that dev version of console, that we can deploy that as a console service mesh. I guess this is kind of an ignorant question, but that's not, it's okay. Okay.
Yeah, so there's maybe a little complexity in that at the moment the sidecar injection. Sorry, I'm thinking out loud, and I'm trying to. My brain was kind of stopping me, saying, "There's a better way, Nick, so don't present that solution." So I think the way that we would do it is probably what we would do is in the configuration when you deploy console onto Kubernetes as a service mesh, you can actually specify the Envoy, the container that's used for the sidecar for Envoy. If we used we would have to use the WASM build of Envoy, but we could actually just use a special build of a special Envoy container, which has both the filter and the WASM Envoy build in there, just on the local file system, and that would actually require no code changes at all to the the Kubernetes injector or anything like that, which is always good, whilst it's not the best solution like prod wise. Like in the short term, it turns things super quick. It's like, can do this like right now, rather than having to go to the team and hit them with a proposal, and then they're like, yeah, sure, we'll do this, and I'll do the code, and then it takes them months for it to, yeah, that would work right now, actually.
Okay. Well, good. This is in some respects a dissatisfying discussion because there's no significant challenges to solve. Any other comments on this topic?
Nothing from my end. Like that's it from my end.
Okay, fair enough. Sounds like we'll follow. We'll have some ongoing discussions there, but that's good. That's positive. That could be accomplishable within the next couple of weeks. The next topic up was is one that's really old, actually. It's an initiative that it's on not on the Meshery project, but on a different project that we have within the community, and it's the service mesh landscape. Briefly, to introduce the topic, is the notion that this landscape is, originally intended to serve as a repository of information about the various meshes and their capabilities, where they're from, who's stewarding them, how old they are, that kind of thing. Not just the service meshes, but also related technologies, so API gateways and things like that. And it's here under its initial form, which is, from my perspective, a great it's a good index of data. But to the end user, from my perspective, it's overwhelming, and it's just a bunch of stuff to sift through that doesn't really tell either the lazy user or the diligent reader. It doesn't really answer their question about, well, hey, which one should I use, or like which one's good for me, or why would I use one versus the next? And because it doesn't say that, it's been, and because it doesn't say that, and because almost all of the data on here has been entered by the project, a representative of these projects themselves, that it's not contentious for the most part, because those project owners are representing themselves, and why? Oh, and because it's not opinionated. Well, the problem with the second part about it being, not opinionated, is it's not nearly as useful or insightful as it could be. It is time to go, hopefully tread lightly and not piss off a lot of people, but to go provide some viewpoints. And to provide those viewpoints, our initial consideration was that we would provide some comparative spectrums. And by that, rather than me verbally describing it, I'll ask Ayush if you're able to demo the work that's in flight here.
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me?
Yep.
So actually the comparative spectrum were based on the slides, which are in the dev community drive. I will share the link in the chat, so you can find it. So this slide from from slide 5 to 8 are the reference through which we have developed the spectrum. So maybe I will be sharing my screen. So, so can you see my screen?
Here it is. Yep.
So, the comparative spectrum in the slides are like this. It says like from left to right, there is a complete spectrum of the technologies that are being used. So there was a pull request from a long time ago by a folk named Silvire, and he did a pretty great job. But because it is so old and there are over 120 plus commits after that, the UI was pretty broken. So I have worked it to fix it and to improve the existing UI. So the current state of the landscape looks like this. Here we are having the service message. This is currently how it looks like, the landscape page. So this is how the service message table looks like, and this is the multi-tenancy. I have increased the size of the images and all. and maybe this is a bit. It should look like this, I think, but maybe the data is not properly there. So this is how it looks, and we have to add these two. I have added the data, but maybe I can pick up the images from this slide as well only. Right, I can pick up the images from here as well. So I have to add in the images to add these rows. So this whole thing, this whole row is a component, which I have earlier it was 4 in a row, and now I have put 6 in a row so that it can easily be glanced through. So any recommendations regarding the UI and regarding the presentation layer of this landscape?
Can we make the multi-tenancy cards into horizontal?
I mean, you are recommending to have a horizontal scrolling cards like in mobile phones like that.
Yes, because there is the size of description is different for each and every tenant, and you can see how ugly it looks.
Okay, so one thing we can do is we can make the height of all the cards equal.
So Ayush, what he's trying to say is, just correct me if I'm wrong, what he's trying to say is that we can put this all in vertical, that all the icons are in vertical on the left side and the description is on the right side on the white. So it will make it consistent.
Yes, that's
All
what
right.
I was saying.
Okay. All right. So also regarding other parts of this, so we are going to have. So can you please can Lee please explain this diagram, because it is only having this image at the top and image at the bottom.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, this is good. Yeah, this is this particular. Well, I don't know that it's best called a spectrum, but maybe. This particular view, so by the way, just for context, the slides that we're looking at here are really kind of inspiration for what Sylvie and what Ayush and Ashish actually a little bit have all worked on that Ayush is showing. This particular slide is saying the company, the primary steward of WeaveNet is WeaveWorks is the company that's the primary steward of WeaveNet, the open source project. So it's which company to which project is what's being kind of shown here. And so Tigera is the main steward of Calico, the open source project. And so to relate that to service meshes would be something like HashiCorp is the company that's the main steward of Console, the open source project.
all right.
And so
okay.
I don't think that we will get in too much hot soup over this one. It would be where we would get into some soup is if you took Istio as an example open source project, you could imagine more than one company logo as being significant contributors to the project, and how that's accounted for. Anyway, we'll probably in the best of ways, we'll accidentally step on some toes, and that'll generate some conversation and get some more visitors, I guess. So that's what that one is about. And by the way, so what Ayush is trying to reincarnate here, based on the work that Sylvia had done, is a few different types of spectrums. A tabular view, literally a linear horizontal view. And if you go back to the current design, so if you go to the multicolored kind of purple and red spectrum, so like the multi-tenancy one is an example of a spectrum that maybe I suggested off my hip that's really is not a great spectrum. It's more of a binary yes or no. You either the service mesh either supports concepts of tenants of multi-tenancy, concepts of multi-tenancy or it doesn't. It's not really a spectrum as much as it is sort of black and white. If you go down to the spectrum below, the one that says network engineers and developers, I think the spectrum becomes interesting when there are things that fall in the middle. Like if you were to take A10 as a service mesh, although it doesn't show it in this screenshot, A10 would probably fall more toward the side of being network engineering friendly, or rather to say, if you are a network engineer, you might find this type of this service mesh to be more of your style. Whereas if you are a developer, you might find these service meshes to be more friendly to you. And I think that type of a comparison or that type of a setup, from my perspective, works fairly well because it is a bit of it's not black and white. It is a bit of it's not that A10 stuff doesn't work for developers. It's just that it may not be as friendly to them. It may speak in more network engineering terms, and it have more network engineering features. So while Ayush is making a call for feedback on the display and the styling and the positioning and things, I'm also making a call to everyone on a request for comment to everyone on this call to consider what spectrums you think we should have. Like one of those is, on one hand, it's very like Ayush, if you go back to the presentation, the Google slides, I think this will give a good example of there's a powerful versus easy to use spectrum. Yeah, actually it's slide 7. This one gives some examples of like how powerful is it, how easy to use versus how easy to use is it. I think some of the terminology here is off because it shouldn't be things like scale and convenience, but feedback that folks might have.
Hey, can I add something? Although I'm not very familiar yet, but I can add in general. What I've seen at few websites just for helping users to grasp the content easily. Sometimes there are scenario-based approaches where they will actually give a scenario, and within that scenario, you may have a like one architecture or multiple architectures, and within those you can basically say for this piece or for this specific aspect, these are the possible technologies. This might be just one way to go about it if we are intending to simplify something. Just giving my thoughts, although I might not be going in the right direction, but just saying it out just in case if that might fit.
Thank you. I think it does. Maybe to regurgitate an example of that, it might maybe something like if your use case and your architecture includes bare metal services running on bare metal and VMs, then maybe this type of architecture and hence these service meshes are for you. If you're only doing things inside of Kubernetes, running only containers and things, then maybe these service meshes are for you. Kind of like that.
Yep, that's what I was meaning to say. I was relating it to one of the recent where I was reading about a few of the AWS web services, and there are a lot of them, right? And what they are trying to simplify there in order for the users or for the developers to choose easily, they were giving this scenario-based examples, and I was just relating to that. It might not be like we can try it out, but it might not be necessarily we don't have to do it like that. If it's helping to solve our problem a little bit, we can try that out.
It's a great suggestion. It really would be helpful. I mean, whether it's architectural diagrams or whether it's certain criteria, it's sort of like, hey, are you a fully on-prem environment? Are you in a hybrid environment? Are you totally public? And maybe that has an effect on which service mesh will work better for you. Do you run VMs and container? You know, like maybe there's a questionnaire, or maybe it's that absolutely a guide to mesh selection makes a ton of sense. And that's in many respects what we're essentially saying is like there's a great repository of information here, but yeah, how do you? It doesn't really quickly answer your question. You know, if you come in and you say, yeah, I'm a network engineer, I'm running mostly on-prem, I'm having to deal with a bunch of VMs as well as containers. Okay, well that means that those 4 aren't going to work for me, while these 5 could. Other feedback?
I mean, we can have like a summary section at the bottom, like which will summarize in which scenario you can have you should use what tool, and we can have a spectrum as well, like an arrow showing. Probably this should be a one-way arrow, which shows this is not multi-tenant and this is multi-tenant, like a spectrum kind of thing. So we can have both as well.
Right. Yeah. For multi-tenancy, it might work better if it's just included in the tabular view or something.
Yeah. Right. For this particular thing, but for these, I mean, for network engineers and developers, or for convenience, it might be a good idea to have a complete spectrum for that.
Any other feedback for Ayush?
Also, if you have any feedback for a better visual representation of these spectrums, that will be great.
Great. Oh, thanks for this, Ayush. This is good. I'm excited for this to finally land. I feel like, yeah. There's a lot of references to that landscape, references in books, references across many other sites, but it's been static for too long. As a matter of fact, and I'll say this, a couple of things with Nick here, because I know it's a point of interest for him as well, and that's that a couple of you that are on the call now are now Google Summer of Code interns or Community Bridge interns, which is awesome. The reason that I say that, well, one is that's awesome, but 2 is that you'll go forth in your effort to create service mesh interface or SMI conformance tooling using Meshery. And so we'll actually put some teeth behind that project. And as we do, the section of the service mesh landscape that we have right now that talks about service mesh compatibility with SMI, that will hopefully be entirely changed. And that will be a lot more accurate based on the tests that Meshery is running. So that's another way that I'm hoping that the landscape evolves. All right, fair enough. Next topic is one that, we talked about a month ago. I think it was April 8th was the dev meeting we spoke on it It's the notion that Meshery CTL as a binary is not capable, it is capable, our CLI tool is capable of updating the container images that Meshery and its adapters run within, but it is not capable of updating itself. The CLI tool is not capable of updating itself. So we spoke about this about a month ago, and Nipur, are you on? I know Nipur is on. She was saying she's got some, bandwidth challenges today. But Nick and Nipur and maybe Anand, we were kind of chatting through this. Nitish is also here in the community now. Nitish, if you have, and so he was going to help move this forward some. Nitish, if you haven't met Nick, who had some great comments last time, please meet Nick.
Yeah. Hey, Nick. Heard a lot about you from Lee. So looking forward to be part of this community.
If Lee said anything, the good stuff is true, and anything bad is a lie.
I believe that.
Look, I use the tools that I can. I don't know that last time we spoke that we were reflecting on some potentially relatively easy ways to win here to like get to an update. And I don't know that last time that we spoke on this call that we had used GitHub CLI GH as what I think is a beautiful example of two things. A beautiful example of a CLI tool facilitating OAuth, which is pretty slick the way that they do it. Also a CLI tool facilitating its own update. I think they do that fairly well.
So just a thought on the command. Do you think it makes sense to call it upgrade? We use update for the core components, and you use upgrade for Meshery Kernel.
Yeah, it's a good, I don't know, or I have not given it enough. It could be that a user might run a single command to do all of them. And maybe that single command would have optional flags to let them control not updating the client if they decided not to, or not updating the server if they decided not to do that. But I think control over that is good. It might be that update and upgrade, people would be left wondering, guessing at which one was doing which.
The only reason I say that people familiar with Brew would know there's a difference between update and upgrade. Like most package managers have that option. You don't want them to inadvertently upgrade the Meshery Kernel or upgrade the rest of the containers, and because going back to the version is probably going to be harder for them.
It's a good point. Yeah, please keep the thoughts flowing. I'm just taking notes that upgrade versus upgrade. I have to be honest. So I'm a Brew user, and I gotta say I just guess each time I go to do it. I'm like, well, was it upgrade or was it?
Yeah, I've been there.
There's I guess maybe two suggestions, maybe a thought about, if they don't specify a flag, it just does everything. If they, skip, as an example. But so now that we brought this topic up, I don't know that I really presented much of a question other than Nitish and I were talking about it. We felt like I felt like, the GitHub CLI was a great example of a couple of things. I know Kanishkar is sort of toying with the notion of the OAuth, the GH login, the OAuth stuff that they do for potentially using that for Meshery CTL in terms of like a Meshery CTL login, so you can log into your provider.
So when you say provider, maybe I don't get the terms. Still getting familiar with that. What do you mean by provider?
No, that's a great. Thanks. Yeah, no, thanks for asking. Actually, let me not use the words and just use the screen. I think that'll be easier. A couple of things to take note of. So, in the Meshery docs, there's a relatively new page called extensibility, and there are more or less sort of 3 areas of extensibility, meaning that the Meshery is intended to support any number of these things, and people can make their own custom one. So a service mesh adapter, and I think that intuitively makes sense to us here. The notion that we would support different types of load generators, like as a pluggable interface, and then the notion of a provider, which maybe the easiest way of conveying that concept is that like if you're familiar with Vagrant or Terraform, and I don't mean to flatter Nick and HashiCorp, it's just the first thing that comes to mind, is that when you go to start Meshery, it asks you to log in or not, or right now it's sort of log in or don't log in. It's this notion that there are user account providers in some respects. Providers really like the place for stateful things. So when I just skipped right past that screen. I'm sorry. I was on auto mode just then. So let me go back. Let me log out. You're prompted here. You don't have an existing session, and there is we will hopefully, before Meshery goes into the CNCF, that we will hopefully have a few more example providers. There are 2 types of providers, a local provider and a remote provider. There's essentially built into the open source code, there's a local provider, and the name of that local provider is called none, and which essentially means like the things that you do within that session are going to be fairly ephemeral, and kind of persist within the lifetime of your container instance. And that's fine. It's essentially a no user mode or a single user mode, but user is sort of implicit. There really isn't one. It's just a generic.
Something like a guest mode.
Yeah. Whereas the only other provider right now is this one, but like hopefully others where you in this provider's case, it's was using cookies as its method of it's always been using social authentication, but then keeping track of that authenticated session as a cookie. And we recently switched over to JWTs, so access tokens, as our method of tracking the authenticated user. And so now I've kind of lost on, the question was, what are providers? And so the deal here is that it becomes important for the command line, the client here, to log into a provider when someone is running a performance test from the CLI. If you want to schedule these, maybe have these performance tests run in context of your CI pipeline, or not, you just prefer the command line versus the UI, that in order to persist the results in a place where you can come back and view them, pull them up here, is that you first log into your provider and establish that session.
And login uses GitHub, Twitter, or is this a standalone login?
It would be depending upon what that particular provider chooses to use.
Okay.
Meshery as a server, as an open source, would say, right now it would say, hey, you'll need to whoever implements this provider and this authentication mechanism, you need to hand back to Meshery server a JWT.
Okay.
But whether that was a social thing or whether that was an LDAP or SAML or something other thing, fine. But what you give back is an access token.
So I haven't done this from the command line. I do understand from the UI. how do redirects work from the command line and giving you an option to log in with social accounts?
Yeah, this is good. So here will be a good test. I think it's absolutely worth spending the rest of our meeting time on that. And that is, you remember the command to delete a brew package? Okay. So let's use the GitHub, the GH as an example. Meshery CTL today does not support login, but so brew install. And so Kanishkar, I'm calling your name out so that you'll see this as well if you haven't already seen it. Wow. Okay, so now that GH is here, I don't know if I did a PR, wait, if I go into maybe my local Meshery fork, I did a checkout of a pull request of 988. It says, hey, notice additional authorization required, press enter to open github.com in your browser. I press enter, it opens up the browser, presents me with this kind of, stereotypically this OAuth authorization. It says, do you want to authorize GitHub to do these things? Authorizing will redirect you back to a port forwarding that is happening behind the scenes here. It will redirect me back to my local, at this port. So the experience is it pops open, it says you need to authorize, it pops open, I click yes, I guess I provide the password. And it says successfully authenticated to GitHub CLI, and it doesn't close the window. I'm assuming that it probably has a hard time doing that, or maybe they just wanted that user experience. It drops me back here, authentication complete, press enter to continue. And yeah, I don't know. And now I'm seeing an error that I hadn't seen before, but that's a fairly slick and quick way of facilitating kind of, and then from there, assuming that I've got the right permissions or scope or what have you, that that's it. Then I can use the command line tool to do. I'm logged in, if you will, to GitHub. And so the hope then being that if we were to come forth with, I don't know what it would, I don't know what the syntax would be, but something similar. Right now, if you do a if you run a performance test from the command line, it assumes that you're using the provider none.
So what? How would this work with CI?
That you would, when you in
The login.
Yeah, that so you're right. The other thing that would probably need to come forth is that just for the CI use case, that you'd come over here and you'd get a token, download the token in a simple.
Okay.
Yeah, and then
You configure it and then
you as a matter of fact, it supports it. I guess I take it back. Like I probably made Meshery sound less capable than it is. So you can use that flag today.
I think it's token. Yeah, you can use it to do performance tests, even if it's the Meshery provider. Like it works for any
Okay.
provider. Yeah, like the config.json. I mean that auth.json contains some config variables and the token which can be used. So it works that way.
Mm-hmm.
And now I'm just playing around, if I can remember. So anyway, don't mind me. What else do we have to? Yeah, we got some further debug to do on the perf command.
I guess that's fine. Get the idea.
Yeah, Nitish, that's a good question about the syntax. Yeah, we do want to take inspiration from popular CLIs where people have become accustomed to the experience. In the past, we talked about one of the, well, yeah, it's easy enough for us. It's easy enough for the CLI to determine what architecture is, what type of operating system it's running on, which is fine if you're just, but we would also need to determine the location of the binary, or determine maybe more than that, not just the location, but whether or not that binary was under package management by Brew or something else. So that we don't circumvent the package manager as we perform an update.
Haley, I had a talk with Anand last time about a Meshery CTL update command. So he told me that he worked on this PR before, but due to the location which Brew downloads the binary into, that was the only problem he was facing. And we both are not really familiar with Brew command a lot. Like, I don't know about Anand. I think he's not on the call, so if I could ask him. So that was the only problem that he was facing, as the task is already done, which was mentioned in the PR 449. So if you could please brief that exactly is the issue with Brew and the path. I was not able to understand that. So
yeah, from my and I'm not an authority here, but my understanding is that, like, if you're using a package manager like Brew to install applications for you, that it has a local database, if you will, a local index of what all packages are that it has installed, and at what version, and so where those packages are installed on the file system. And that if we, as a separate utility, go in and update, go in and mess with packages that it considers is under its own management, that we might be successful in updating Meshery CTL to the next version, but Brew wouldn't necessarily know that. So
you said GH, the CLI can do this?
Yeah, and I just installed Brew. It does.
Update.
Yeah.
I guess we could steal that code. I mean, so that's if we are getting inspired by the GitHub CLI, might as well leverage that code and see how they do it for different package managers.
Lee, I have one more question. When Anand was working on it, I guess we did not have Scoop then. Now we also have Scoop. So I think the same problem that we have with Brew will also rise for Scoop.
Yeah, I think that would be the case. That we're a victim of our own compatibility matrix. So here, I think yes is the short answer, and then to Nitish's Nitish's point, I very much so agree with what Nitish said, which is why I was linking to the update.go, which I don't know that that's the only file that, the only set of code. But yeah, it may be that we should go look through here and see if they are either invoking Brew to do an update. That would be one approach that we would invoke. We would look for Scoop or we would look for Brew, and if present on either the Mac or the Windows-based systems, we would invoke those utilities to perform the update. Actually, I think looking at what these guys have done for Brew will be insightful.
I will go for this file, and they also have Scoop in it, so I guess Brew and Scoop both will get solved this problem, because I went through this CLI document and I saw that they're also using Scoop. So yeah, I guess that will help us.
All right, good. Huh. All right, we're a minute over. Any other comments for today? Anything else? I'll say that I owe Sarah a follow-up to our conversation, so very happy to see you on today, Sarah. Outside of that, all right, fair enough, very good. We'll catch you all on Friday. Hopefully we'll also be, some of you might, just last update here is on last Friday, we said that we're going to create another working group, the Service Mesh Performance Working Group, and that while we had begun to do that within this community, I consider that we'll probably go ahead and do that within the CNCF. And so I announced that at the last CNCF Network SIG, and so the next steps here are that we'll probably just send out a survey for what's a convenient meeting time, but that will hopefully help give some additional legitimacy to the service mesh performance specification that we've been working on, and hopefully welcome others to the fold. So. All right, fair enough. Thanks all. Thank you, Nick. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Bye, Nitish. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.